In the golden age of piracy, the Caribbean Sea was alive with gunfire, smoke, and the thunder of cannons. Ships bearing flags of kings and empires trembled at the sight of the black sails and the dreaded Jolly Roger. Yet, among the ruthless men who ruled these waters, one name has endured for centuries, not for the size of her fleet, nor the treasure she stole, but for the sheer audacity of her existence. That name was Anne Bonny, a fiery, red-haired Irish woman who defied her time. She shattered expectations, took up arms, and carved her legend into the blood-stained pages of history. This is not simply the tale of a pirate, it is the story of rebellion, survival, and a woman who refused to bow to anyone. Origins of a scandal. Anne Bonny was likely born around the year 1700 in County Cork, Ireland. From the very start, her life was wrapped in controversy. Her father, William Cormac, was a respected lawyer. Her mother, Mary Brennan, however, was not his wife, but his servant. The affair disgraced William. His respectable marriage crumbled when his wife discovered the truth. Outcast, ridiculed, and stripped of status, William gathered Mary and young Anne and fled across the Atlantic. The family settled in the province of Carolina, a world away from Ireland's green shores, but still full of tension, hardship, and opportunity. There, William tried to rebuild his fortune as a planter and merchant. But young Anne quickly proved she was not destined to be a quiet southern lady, a temper like fire. From a young age, Anne's fiery nature was the talk of the settlement. Her striking red hair matched her infamous temper. Stories of her ferocity spread like wildfire. One tale tells of Anne stabbing a servant boy at just 13 years old. Another claims she nearly beat a young man half to death for attempting to assault her. Whether these tales were exaggerated or not, they cemented her reputation. Anne Bonny was not a girl to be crossed. As she grew into her teenage years, her defiance only sharpened. She clashed with her father, rejected the role society demanded of women, and hungered for freedom. Some say she even burned her father's plantation to the ground in a fit of rage. Whether legend or truth, the image stuck. Anne was a storm in human form, unwilling to be tamed. Marriage and escape by her late teens. Anne had attracted attention, not only for her beauty but for her wild spirit. Her father, eager to control her, arranged a marriage. But Anne had no intention of being used as a bargaining chip. Instead, she fell for James Bonny, a poor sailor with little to offer except adventure. Against her father's wishes, she married James and took his name. But William Cormac, furious at her disobedience, disowned her entirely. Anne had burned her bridges in Carolina. With James, she boarded a ship bound for the Bahamas, the very heart of piracy in the early 18th century. Nassau, a pirate's paradise, the island of New Providence. With its capital, Nassau was a strange kind of heaven. To European empires, it was a nightmare. Pirates swarmed the harbor, taverns overflowed with stolen rum, and lawless men walked freely with pistols at their hips. But to Anne, it was freedom. Here, pirates ruled, not kings. And in Nassau's smoky taverns, among cutthroats and adventurers, Anne Bonny felt more alive than she ever had in Carolina's rigid society. James Bonny, however, had other ideas. Far from embracing piracy, he became an informant for Governor Woodes Rogers, selling information on pirates to the authorities for coin. Anne despised him for it. To her, betrayal was the lowest crime, and James Bonny had become nothing more than a snitch. It was in Nassau's bustling chaos that Anne's life would take its most fateful turn. Enter Calico Jack among the pirates of Nassau. Few were as flamboyant as Captain John Calico Jack Rackham. Known for his brightly patterned clothing and fearless charm, Rackham commanded a small but formidable sloop called the Revenge. When Anne met him, sparks flew instantly. Where James Bonny had turned cautious and dull, Rackham embodied everything Anne craved: danger, freedom, and rebellion. Their affair began quickly, fueled by rum, desire, and shared defiance. Calico Jack even offered James money to release Anne so they could marry. James refused, but Anne was not a woman who waited for permission. She abandoned her husband and sailed away with Rackham, choosing the life of a pirate over the chains of respectability. It was a decision that would etch her name into legend. Life aboard a pirate ship was not for the faint of heart. The creak of timbers, the endless rocking of the waves, the stench of sweat and gunpowder. This was the world Anne Bonny chose when she fled with Calico Jack Rackham. At first, she disguised herself as a man. Dressed in loose trousers, a broad hat pulled low, and pistols slung at her waist, she blended in with Rackham's crew. But Anne's secret could not last forever. She was too fierce, too bold. Her fellow sailors soon discovered the truth. She was a woman. But by then, she had already proved herself. Anne fought alongside the men in boarding raids, slashing with cutlass and firing pistols with deadly aim. She drank rum with them in taverns, cursed as loudly as any sailor, and showed no fear in the thick of battle. Anne Bonny was no man's captive, no stowaway, hidden in the shadows. She was a pirate in her own right. The arrival of Mary Reddit was around this time that another extraordinary woman entered the tale. Mary Red. Mary had lived her life in disguise, raised by her mother to pose as a boy in order to claim an inheritance. For years she served as a soldier, a sailor, and eventually, by twists of fate, found her way into piracy. When Anne first met her aboard Rackham's crew, she too believed Mary was a man. Some accounts even claim Anne fell for her before Mary revealed her secret. Regardless, when Anne learned the truth, she was overjoyed. Here was another woman who defied the world's expectations, another sister in arms. The two became inseparable. Some whispers claimed they were lovers, sharing both bed and battle with Calico Jack. Whether true or not, their bond was undeniable. Together, Anne Bonny and Mary Read became the fiercest pair of women pirates the Caribbean had ever seen. The William and the Pirate's Life, with their growing crew. Rackham, Bonny, and Red captured a merchant vessel called the William. It became their new flagship, and aboard it, the trio carved out their brief reign of terror. For the next few years, they prowled the waters near Jamaica, preying on small, poorly defended ships. Their raids were swift and brutal, the kind of attacks that spread fear faster than cannon fire. Anne was always in the thick of the fight. Witnesses later swore that she was as capable as any man on deck, wielding sword and pistol with ferocity. Her courage was infectious. Some said she even fought more fiercely than many of the male pirates around her. By 1720, Anne Bonny's reputation had grown so notorious that Governor Woodes Rogers of the Bahamas listed her name in a public proclamation, branding her one of the most wanted pirates of the Caribbean. Imagine that. For a woman in an age when most never left their kitchens or parlors, Anne Bonny's name was feared across the seas, a pirate's family. But amid the chaos, Anne's life took an unexpected turn. She became pregnant with Rackham's child. For a pirate, pregnancy was both dangerous and inconvenient. It slowed mobility and risked capture. Rackham, determined to protect her, left Anne ashore in Cuba, where she gave birth. What happened to the child remains a mystery. Some accounts say the baby was given to relatives of Rackham. Others whisper that the child was abandoned. Anne never spoke of it. What mattered was the sea still called to her, and soon after she returned to piracy at Rackham's side. The height of infamy by now, Anne, Mary, and Jack were legends in their own time. Tales spread of the two fiery women who fought like demons beside their captain. The truth is, their victories were small compared to the great fleets of men like Blackbeard or Bartholomew Roberts. They captured mostly fishing boats, merchant sloops, and coastal traders. But their audacity is what struck terror. To encounter not just one, but two women pirates, fearless and deadly, was unheard of. Sailors whispered their names in ports, taverns, and markets, embellishing every detail until Anne Bonny and Mary Red were larger than life. But legends, like storms, always draw attention, and the authorities were closing in. The fall begins in October 1720. The end came swiftly. Rackham's crew had anchored off the coast of Jamaica, celebrating their latest prize. Rum flowed freely, and most of the men were drunk when they least expected danger. A heavily armed ship, commanded by Captain Jonathan Barnett under orders from Governor Nicholas Laws, descended upon them. As Barnett's cannons fired, chaos erupted. Rackham's men stumbled about in confusion, too intoxicated to fight. But Anne Bonny and Mary Red refused to surrender. Eyewitnesses claimed the two women stood shoulder to shoulder, pistols blazing, cutlasses flashing, screaming at the men around them to fight like men instead of cowering below deck. For a brief, furious moment, they held the enemy at bay, but it was hopeless. Outnumbered and abandoned by their drunken comrades, the women were overwhelmed. The Jolly Roger fell. Calico Jack's reign was over, shackled and sentenced. Rackham and his crew were dragged in chains to Jamaica, thrown into the dark, suffocating cells of Spanish Town. There, Anne Bonny saw Calico Jack one final time, but instead of offering comfort, her words were as sharp as her blade. "If you had fought like a man," she spat, "you would not have been hanged like a dog." It was a brutal farewell, yet it summed up Anne perfectly. She admired courage above all, and in her eyes Rackham had failed her. Jack Rackham was hanged soon after, his body displayed as a warning to other pirates. His legend ended on the gallows, but Anne Bonny's story was not over. The capture of Anne Bonny, Mary Red, and Calico Jack Rackham's crew sent shockwaves through the Caribbean. By the autumn of 1720, piracy was already under siege. The so-called Golden Age was crumbling as empires struck back with naval patrols and ruthless hangings. But the trial of Anne and Mary was unlike anything Jamaica had seen before. Here were two women accused of crimes normally reserved for hardened men: robbery, violence, mutiny, piracy. Their very presence in the dock scandalized society and fascinated it. The trial of the pirate women in Spanish Town, the court convened. The air was hot, the room packed with onlookers eager to glimpse the infamous pirate women. Witnesses recounted how Anne and Mary had fought with the ferocity of lions, even as their ship fell. They had cursed their fellow sailors for cowardice, urging them to stand and fight. The verdict was swift: guilty. Both Anne Bonny and Mary Read were sentenced to hang. But then came a twist, pleading the belly as the noose loomed. Both women made a desperate claim. They were pregnant. In English law, a woman carrying life in her womb could not be executed until after the child was born. The plea was known as pleading the belly. The court accepted. Their executions were postponed. The men of Rackham's crew swung from the gallows, but the women remained alive, for now. Mary Read's tragic end. For Mary, reprieve was short-lived. In the dank, disease-ridden prison, her health failed. In the spring of 1721, she fell gravely ill. Some said it was fever, others childbirth complications. Mary Read died behind bars, her body buried in an unmarked grave. No child survived her. The fiery comrade who had stood beside Anne in battle was gone, her story ending in obscurity and shadows. The disappearance of Anne Bonny. And what of Anne? Here the trail grows murky. Historical records fall silent. No official account of her execution survives. Some believe she died in prison, her child lost, her name forgotten. But others whisper a different tale. One rumor suggests her wealthy father, William Cormac, intervened, quietly paying for her release and spiriting her back to Carolina. Some reports claim she remarried, bore children, and lived out her life as a respectable woman. Her pirate past buried like treasure beneath the sands of time. Still others imagine she returned to the sea, vanishing into the ranks of anonymous pirates. Her flame never fully extinguished. The truth may never be known. Anne Bonny's final fate remains one of history's great mysteries. Legacy of a pirate queen. What cannot be denied is the power of her legend. Anne Bonny defied the world she was born into. At a time when women were expected to serve husbands and obey fathers, she carved her own path with sword in hand. She was a pirate, a lover, a fighter, and above all, a rebel. Unlike the vast armadas of Blackbeard or Bartholomew Roberts, Anne commanded no great fleets. Her career was brief, her prizes modest. Yet her story endures because it is not merely about gold or plunder, it is about defiance. She proved that courage knows no gender, that the spirit of rebellion burns as fiercely in women as in men, that even in an age of kings, empires, and rigid hierarchies, one fiery redhead from Ireland could shake the world. The final image, picture it: the smoke-choked deck of the William. Cannons roaring, men cowering below while two women stood firm, blades flashing, daring the enemy to take them down. That moment, more than any treasure or victory, is Anne Bonny's legacy. Her life was messy, violent, uncertain, but it was lived on her own terms. And perhaps that is why, 3 centuries later, we still speak her name, Anne Bonny, the pirate queen who refused to bow.